My name is Don K. Preston. I am the president of Preterist Research Institute of Ardmore, Oklahoma. We are examining the resurrection of 1 Corinthians 15 in the light of Paul's motif of the end-time suffering, what's known as the birth pains of Messiah. This doctrine was well established in Judaism. It's found throughout the Old Testament, as I've been sharing with you. Paul said, the whole creation groans in birth pains until now. And by the way, Paul's reference to these birth pains is one of the reasons why we cannot take Romans chapter 8 and the suffering that Paul is talking about as a reference to the normal human experience. I am absolutely astounded as I read the commentaries of great men. And they go to Romans chapter 8 and they say, well, you know, Paul's talking about the afflictions of the human condition. It's cancer. It's heart attacks. It's just the burden of this sin-cursed world. No, folks, that's not right. Paul is talking about, in his context, he's talking about persecution. End times persecution. You see, there's a two-faceted aspect to the end time persecution. There's the Great Tribulation, but there's also the suffering of the people of God. They're interrelated, but they're not the same. Well, anyway, in Isaiah chapter 26, the writer, the prophet, picks up this motif of the suffering, the end time suffering, as it relates to the resurrection. He's already told us in chapter 25, as I've just stated, that the resurrection would be when the city and the temple would be destroyed. That's clear. That's emphatic. Well, look at this. Isaiah chapter 26, verse 16 and following. Lord, in trouble, they, that's your people, have visited you. They poured out a prayer when your chastening woes were upon them. The Lord's chastening woes. Now watch this. As a woman with child, it is in pain and cries out in her pangs when she draws near to the time of her delivery, so have we been in your sight, O Lord. We have been with child. We have been in pain. We have, as it were, brought forth wind. We have not accomplished any deliverance in the earth, nor have the inhabitants of the earth fallen. Your dead shall live. Together with my body they shall arise. Awake and sing, you who dwell in the dust, for your dew is the dew of herbs, and the earth shall cast out the dead. Here is Isaiah using the exact, specific imagery of birth pangs. The longing for deliverance. And he says, your dead shall live. Now, notice what he says in verse 21. For behold, the Lord comes out of his place. Is the resurrection at the coming of the Lord? Well, it's at the time, verse 19, that the earth shall cast out the dead. It's out of the dust. Okay, watch this. For behold, the Lord comes out of his place to punish the inhabitants of the earth for their iniquity. The earth will disclose her blood and no longer cover her slain. Do you catch that? This resurrection would be when the earth would cast out her dead, out of the dust. It would be when the blood of the Lord's saints was vindicated. Do you catch the power of that? When did Jesus say that all of the blood of all of the righteous shed on the earth from creation onward would be vindicated? Matthew 23, 36 and following. Upon you shall come all of the righteous blood shed on the earth, from righteous Abel unto righteous Zechariah, son of Barachias, whom you slew between the temple and the altar. Verily I say unto you, all of these things will come upon this generation. That's pretty emphatic. We thus have the birth pangs of Messiah, Isaiah 26. At the time of the resurrection out of the dust, when the earth would cast out her dead, would no longer cover the blood of her dead, when the Lord would come out of his place and vindicate the blood of his martyrs. And Jesus said the vindication of the blood of all the martyrs would be in his generation in the judgment of Jerusalem. I don't know how anything could be any clearer. Now what that means, folks, is that the resurrection of Romans 8 would be at the time of the vindication of the martyrs. The resurrection of 1 Corinthians 15 would be at the time of the vindication of the blood of the martyrs. The vindication of the blood of the martyrs would be in AD 70. That's so powerful. And guess what? We've got more. We'll see you on the flip side.